Hey, everybody. Welcome to TLDM, a Dungeons & Dragons podcast. I'm your co-host, Tyler Samples.
And I'm your co-host, Alan Linick.
Together, we DM two separate campaigns set in one world. In a world in which there are two players, two DMs, but only one game. You found it. It's here.
This is it. Yeah.
Welcome to TLDM
world.
podcast.
Yeah. We have a couple things we want to talk about today. Specifically, we're going to talk about homebrewing and why to do it, how to go about it.
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of laser focus in on two specific aspects of the game that we are homebrewing and that have become popular topics of discussion in the community recently. But we're going to start with a little campaign recap.
Campaign recap.
So
it has been since
a while. Yes.
So I'm going to let you go ahead and we'll do what was Polindo?
Why don't from Les's perspective, what's going on? What's been going on recently? In the Polindo campaign.
Yeah. So in the East, what's been going on is there was a mob of people. The social contract between free citizens in Polindo is breaking down. Treaties are being ignored and wiped clean. Mobs are in the streets. Things are going badly. And so we had gone on trial. I think that was the episode that got recorded.
Play. Yeah.
And we were exonerated, but there has still been trouble a-brewing in Stesso. And so we decided to go find our secret benefactors, the Danons, no relation to Yoplait Danons, or maybe relation, I don't know. It hasn't been revealed yet. And so that's a trek out west. So we hit the road to try to swing by to meet a Order of the Wild Brethren that I was keyed to, that Leslie Bad Apple was keyed to. Walked our way into an ambush that we prevented. We killed a bunch of goblins with the help of Polarian, a guy that all of us suspected was a dragon very early on, or something. I actually thought he was an angel type figure. It turns out he was a dragon in disguise, a good one, so far as we know, who helped us. We were hanging out at his place chilling because he knew this Order of the Brethren person, and was calling her to come, we were waiting for her to show up before we moved on. And then an assassin from Albrecht Fireforge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Snuck in and, murdered Claire Linick, Alan's wife's character, before she had done nary a move in our most recent session. So Falkren, King of the Dwarves,
the
is
reason
dead.
that happened was the justice system had failed Albert Fireforge. He was seeking...
It made total sense.
Seeking vengeance for his house being broken into. And when he couldn't get it the legal way, he went at
legal.
It the illegal way.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I think there was some odd gameplay choices from other players in terms of like how seriously they took death saves, which is probably my fault because I was like, we can fix you.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not keeping in mind the sort of to borrow from Colville's thing of like he steps on your head to make sure you're really dead. We weren't playing under that model of DM like willingness to kill.
Yeah, this was the first time the party had come up against a character who was simply there to murder someone and then get away.
Yeah. And so they were very successsul.
Yeah, there was a murder.
And they got away.
And, well, they died, actually.
Oh, they did?
Because then you spoke with the dead.
That's right. So we talked to the dead, whatever. And then refugees from the demon continent, as I will refer to it, washed ashore with demons in tow, and we fought them, and now we are back on our journey to find the Danons, but with a new friend from the Sacred Fist. Is that what it's called?
Celestial Fist.
Celestial Fist, the SWAT or the SEAL Team 6 of the fantasy realm, coming along for the ride with us. my Les has a bit of a crush on this character, and then discovered at the end of the session that the character is the new character for Claire.
Yep.
So inadvertently, my character has a crush on Alan's wife's character.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it will be fine. Les is not a deal seller.
I mean, again, characters, so I don't care.
Character.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, more or less where we're at. Everything else is relatively stable. It's the closest thing to objectives and a mission that we've internally had in our entire game, in terms of like us being like, let's go do this thing.
Yeah, you have a place that you're trying to actually go
And
for like internally motivated purposes.
Yeah, we have questions we want answers to and goals to achieve, which is ultimately, so it seems like at this point we are trying to gather the resources necessary to be able to liberate Chithalan, or at the very least prevent the demon continent from incursing on our own lands.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just like small fish, so we're trying to like eat, yum our way up the food chain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or at very least escape to a smaller pond.
Yeah, exactly. Or keep our pond, put a dam between our pond and the river upstream.
Right.
The river of shit.
Metaphors.
Yeah. So that's the Eastern campaign. The Western campaign is a little different. The
we are
shearing
1,000
campaign.
years in the future.
Yeah, a lot has happened.
Yeah, we are 1,000 years in the future. I can't remember from the last time we recorded. I think everyone knows Soak has died.
No.
They don't?
No, that happened.
Hey, heads up, everyone. Soak the Tabaxi monk is dead.
Mm-hmm. The last living link to our old campaign.
Yeah. He became understandably depressed after the events of the Western campaign forced him 1,000 years into a friendless desert future.
Yeah.
Owned and mostly destroyed by a dragon that he himself sort of accidentally empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, some severe depression. And he did succeed in basically killing himself by throwing himself into the mouth of a monster.
Was that what happened? Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
And then he got killed by some drow.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So he basically was just throwing himself into harm's way in the hopes of getting put out of his misery, and much honestly to my actual player's surprise succeeded.
Yeah.
So he is dead, and I got to roll Bard.
Yeah.
By the name of Rake, who is she's a tiefling who is basically in a weird twist of fate because of the time jump. She is a refugee from what is left of this demon continent,
right?
But she is
a demon.
So she they conquered it in the past, and then subsequently this continent was shattered by the Dracolich. So she is sort of like in an ironic way following in the footsteps of the very people that she conquered, that her people helped to conquer many, many years ago.
Yeah, 1,000 years ago.
But she has joined up with the party and is doing a decent job at converting them and finding some new followers for her demon overlord. I'm playing her sort of as like a missionary style character, which is really fun to role play.
And today was the first time that like the characters in the party were clued into that.
Yeah, they didn't realize that she was literally a demon worshiper until today. Sheriff Boots, the time-traveling Dragonborn warlock, is super into it. Yeah. Which is great. I also obtained a follower in the form of Alf, the drow, who converted at the point of a sword. And
I mean, they already follow demons anyway, so I felt like...
Yeah,
that seems like a pretty easy sell. Yeah. To be like...
Die or change demons.
Yeah, die or change demons.
And he's a male, so drow society can't be very friendly to him.
No. It's like convincing a drone ant of like...
Hey, would you rather not be that?
Yeah, would you rather die either way or not die? Yeah. There's going to be a lot of that now when we record.
So that happened.
So you have a buddy?
No Name, I have a buddy. No Name is very against the demon worship. So there's like some interesting party dynamic stuff happening that's really fun. And we're sort of developing, because everyone's kind of playing a new character, and we've been kind of trickling in, and now we have the group really together. So we have some interesting party dynamic stuff going on that's been real interesting. And Tyler's actually working on I don't know if this ties into, I guess, what our homebrew situation is. Yeah. But Tyler is working on a system that I requested because Chelsea's character, Sheriff, is putting a lot of energy into trying to woo Rake, my bard.
Yeah, so, she's got the hots, or he has the hots for Rake.
Her. Yeah. So Tyler is putting together a system. Curious about the details of it.
Yeah, still have to figure it out.
Kind of tracking like how successful Sheriff is being in sort of like wooing.
Because doing like straight charisma checks doesn't feel accurate to anything. I think we'll use, like I was saying, I think I might use some sort of like tracking system, like a bond system from Dungeon World, which and related games, which is a system that I'm really, really interested in, because they've been using it for Adventure Zone, a heavily modified version of it, and they use it in a couple of other D&D-esque, I guess, really RPG podcasts. And one of the things in there is called bonds, and so it's like a tracker in terms of, it's like I have +3 bond with Rake, -2 bond with Laffy Taffy, which is Jeff's no name.
For now, you might get a new name.
Yeah, his current nickname is Laffy Taffy.
Yeah, which Sheriff might have stolen literally from our world.
Yeah, he might have literally consumed Laffy Taffy. In fact, I'm going to assume that that's what happened.
Yeah. And then plot-wise, we have tracked down. We're hanging out in a mobile gnome fortress called Willow Green.
Yeah, the Willow Green Arc.
And we have discovered that gnomes in a very interesting time loop, perhaps maybe paradox, arm shrug, that gnomes were created a long time ago as servants, and basically were able to break free of their chains because gnomes from the future traveled back in time and basically released them, and then give them knowledge of what's to come so that they can do it again, and keep this sort of circle going. But because someone screwed all of this up, screwed all this up, the gnomes are worried that the date that they're supposed to go back in time is fast approaching, but they know, like, all the stuff that's happening doesn't match up with their records. So they've kind of enlisted our help, and we're going for it. We're doing it. We're doing an alliance with the gnomes, and it's been pretty rad so far. Yeah, basically, they were like, if we don't reset time within the next 3 years, if we could turn back time, if they don't, then the world ends. Or at least some of them believe that, and others don't. And they were very convincing. So we're sort of like in on that. Yeah, it feels as fun as anything else. I would love some flatbread. Yeah, but which is funny because like that's something that I thought of at the same time when I figured out what the key of Rethador was. That's when I decided all of that for the gnomes. So that's something that has been true the entire time we've been playing the game, and I just never thought it would come up until you got sent into the future. It did. Yeah. So that sort of lets us segue pretty easily, because today, for the first time, Tyler emailed me a couple of days ago and was like, hey, I want to try, what do you think about this adjustment to the way rests work? We sort of went back and forth on it, and ultimately we were like, we should talk about this on the podcast, because that's why this podcast exists. It's what we do. It's literally all we do. So this is my full-time job. This is it, guys. Please, for God's sake, please subscribe. We need the money so badly. Yeah, please sponsor. And I know you're wondering to yourself, how are they making money from subscriptions when they don't have ads? And the answer to that is we didn't think this through, and that's okay. Yeah, we're not doing this for the money. No, we were doing it for the money, and now that we know we don't get paid for nothing. Yeah, we're doing it because honestly, I enjoy this game a lot, and one of the things that I really like about it, and kudos to Mike Mearls and the design team as a whole behind 5th edition, is how easy it is to modify or modulate rules. Yeah, I agree with that. And because you can, I mean, and we're talking in a macro sense of like, and we sort of touched on this in previous discussions on this podcast, the idea of like, what races and classes will I allow at my table? What's my world look like if I'm homebrewing a world? Like blah, blah, blah. So there's that sort of macro level thing you can do where you're just like, I know these things are in the book, but they're not here.
Yeah. Like for example, 1,000 years in the future.
Mutants.
Yeah. The only races you can play are demi-humans, like anything that's a half elf, half elf isn't even allowed, is Genasi, Tiefling, Goliath. I think that's it, really. And mutants, which is just, again, like we were saying, a homebrew, which is just like humans and dwarves mixed together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then something interesting you did, and no one ended up picking a mutant, but something interesting you had in the works for that was that because of their mutations and the variants therein, you roll on a table to discover what your personal racial bonuses are.
Yeah, exactly.
So like maybe you don't get dark vision, maybe you get spider climb because you have you're all tentacles or something.
Yeah, it was going to be roll to see what your mutation is, your physical mutation is, and then we will figure out what the bonus, like what attendant benefits that grants you.
Right. So that's sort of like the first level of...
But apparently my mutants were too gross and people were too disgusted at the idea of being mutated.
Every time Tyler describes a new mutant, the whole table retches because they're fucking disgusting.
I mean, yeah, I get it. But also like, I'm also constantly a little surprised.
Brown curly hair dangling from where someone's eyes are supposed to be.
It's not curly. It's straight. It's rigidly straight.
That's worse.
I agree. It's way worse.
Way worse.
But yeah, one of the mutants is a normal, pretty woman, but where her eyeballs should be, it's just long,
like tufts of sprouty, gross.
Oh, I imagine like almost like a ponytail out of each eye socket, just like descending down.
You need to go to a doctor. But so that's like kind of the first and probably most common reason to homebrew something or make modifications is I know what kind of world I want to play in, and I want the rules to reflect, or like what's available to reflect my vision of this world. But the second one, which we're going to dive into sort of now, is going to center around this rest idea. And I think that second reason basically boils down to like, I want to, I think there's certain rules in the book that are made based on assumptions of what your sessions look like.
Right.
And rests are one of those things where they're like, this is balanced around the idea of X number of combats or whatever a day, and you being injured this much, or you needing this much time, and blah, 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 blah. And like in-game, when I say time, in-game time.
Right.
So what we've been discovering is that or at very least Tyler has discovered that for his DMing style, that doesn't necessarily match up.
Yeah.
So you pitched this idea or sent your idea to me about modifying rest. Do you want to break that down really quick?
So as I understand it, I believe that the standard literature and everything says we're supposed to do like 6 to 8 encounters a day, I think is right, before a long rest, or maybe it's 4 to 6.
I think it's 4 to 6 sounds right.
Which is still
a lot.
And honestly is not fun for me. I don't, the more we play, the more I'm like, combat is the least entertaining part of this for anybody in terms of actually running numbers and stuff. The idea of combat is very fun. Mm-hmm. It's fun to like wallop stuff and be threatened by things. But actually being like, you get a 6 or miss or whatever, it's just like the mechanics of combat gets, I think.
They can, and we've talked about this before. Yeah. Combat is the easiest place that the game can grind to a halt.
Yeah. And is certainly the least entertaining part for me as a DM, because I can't be as just reactive to people throwing out cool ideas, because people generally are going to be like, I hit it. And you rarely get the like, I swing from the chandelier and do a backflip and try to like do a chokehold with my legs, because that's not mechanically explained clearly. What's explained clearly is I get a +7 to hit, and it's like, I want to kill this thing. So I generally do, and as we keep leveling up, I'm less interested in like watching you guys like deal with minions, and am more interested in watching you. I like every fight to feel like a possible losable fight. Mm-hmm. even if that sometimes ends up in just being wildly under or overpowered.
And there are other ways to lose a fight too, rather
Yeah.
than like knocking somebody down. Is
Right.
another thing to consider.
Right.
It's like the objectives. I think the objectives often in combat boil down to which team can knock the other team out.
Right.
But if there are other things in play, there's ways to all stay standing and maybe never even get hit and still lose
Right.
the battle.
Right. A lot of those other things are either because of environment things in terms of like how our current campaign that I'm leading you guys in, where you're currently at, don't fit because it's so dog eat dog, cold hard. It's almost like the sun is dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a dark sun, almost like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, almost like that. No relation. So there's a lot of combat. Also, we just have like slap happy group of folks. They're happy to slap.
We did some interesting stuff today, though. And again, I think
Which
that's
was
because
fun.
the goal was we were trying to retrieve something.
Right.
So the like walloping nature of it, like we had a moment where we noticed that the people we were tracking were about to be attacked by basically like a predatory monster.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, cool, we're just going to let this happen.
Yeah.
And we were prepared to stand back. And then we realized, I forget who said it first, but someone was like, well, what if the thing eats because we're after a corpse. What if the thing eats the corpse?
Right.
And we were like, well, then we lose. So the game, the goals of the game, on a player level changed because we had to be like, okay, we're not in this to battle. We're in this because we need to get this thing back.
We just need this corpse, which I thought was really fun. And in part, that's just me finding more stuff. Anyway, TLDM, but
Here we go. Moving on.
Ultimately, since it's based on a 4 to 6 combat day, but I'm doing 1 to 2 combats a day, if that. Short, it means we rarely, if ever, take short rests because you just push through to the long rest always comes before the short rest most of the time. And it doesn't make sense internally to take a short rest because it's like, why would we take an hour out? It just doesn't feel right to the play. So I pitched doing 15-minute or 10, roughly the same, just like a 15-minute short rest instead of an hour short rest. And then that felt so just to like give people a sense of like invincibility, basically, so that they feel more inclined to push themselves further, so that there's less of a day-long tax and more of just a like battle-to-battle tax. But then I was thinking about it further and was like, it's still then it's still the problem that I'm having is not actually short rests. It's long rests giving full HP back because we long rest every session. We have a long rest, and I'm not interested in finding reasons to prevent you from being able to sleep because we're moving on a scale that's larger than 24-hour periods.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to move at a scale that vacillates wildly between like a whole session being 2 hours long is the amount of time in game, and like ideally getting to the point where like weeks go by so that we can like start to pick up our narrative flow. And so then anyway, long story short, so what we're going to try to do and what we tried today is short rests are 15 minutes, long rests, you regain all of your hit die, but you don't regain hit points. So your hit die are a much more valued resource in this model because you actually have to use them, to be doing. And so you can effectively create the same thing if you don't get hit hard enough, but it means now you'll have to take at least one short rest a day.
Yeah.
To stay standing.
Yes. And we'll see. I mean, we've played through, like you said, we've done one session of this so far. We implemented it today and it seems fun. We'll see through playtesting it if it needs to be tweaked in either direction.
Yeah.
I remember emailing you that, my main concern was that what this might inadvertently do is push the party into resting a lot more.
Right.
Because let's say we get beat up pretty bad, and then we need to basically, if we need to plow through all of our hit dice,
right.
Or we are at a point where like we're hurt enough that spending all of our hit dice still won't fill us up, then we could run into a situation where like we're long resting so that we can short rest to heal.
Right.
And then we have no hit dice and we have to play real cautious until we can long rest a second time.
Yeah, which honestly is actually part of the thing that I'm looking for. I would actually like you guys to play a little bit more cautiously. Because like today, I think we'll ideally get more instances like today where it's like, wait, we don't actually need to fight. We can do other things than fight. And I think making it harder to be, making it be that at any given day I have 6 hit dice, or, more realistically 18 hit dice from like 3 short rests a day. And that's the only way I can heal before tomorrow. Feels a little more interesting to me than
like, I'll just sleep it off.
Yeah, we'll just wait until the end of the day and then it goes back to normal.
Yeah, and it does tie back into, I forget which episode, we talked about the idea of taxing party resources and effectively putting value on certain things. We talked about it in reference to gold and to hit points, I think, because in this edition specifically, unless you're really gunning for someone, it's very hard to die.
Yeah.
There's loads of time and opportunities to prevent someone from dying, which can impact how valuable hit points feel.
Yeah.
Because if you know you're going to get them all back every time you long rest, and you know that even if you're knocked down to 0, you'll become conscious again as soon as you regain anything.
Right.
It can take some of the immediacy or threat out of like running low, because you have so many resources available to regain hit points when you're taking short rests, and you get a second short rest, and then you can take a long rest and everything comes back. So dialing back how quickly we're able to regain those resources might be super interesting. So we'll keep you guys listening updated on how that feels to play. Yeah.
And then the other stuff that we're doing, internally in the game I'm running, we decided kind of just on the cuff, to switch initiative to be based on intelligence instead of dex. Which there are a lot of things online with people talking about this, just because dex has so many things sort of needlessly tied to it. It's the sort of uber stat.
It is I think a 5th edition, it's the uber stat.
And it makes, I think the arguments for using intelligence instead is just like your actual mental awareness and ability to mentally react, as opposed to just reflexively move, kind of reflects your ability to, you can make an argument for wisdom, as well. I think we went with intelligence because it's sort of the least valuable stat. So it helps to balance stuff out. And it makes it fun
there's a role play element to it too, of being able to sort of like assess a situation quickly, and react to it. Where I think Dex is sort of leaning in the direction of like it's reflex, right? So like if you're under attack or you're ready to fight, your adrenaline starts pumping, and it's like pure speed of movement or speed of reflex. Where I think we're trying to push more in a direction of like it's your ability to quickly figure out what the threats are in this situation, what's available to you to do, and then deciding on a course of action.
Right, exactly. Which was also fun because since we did that, Tim Dunn is playing his barbarian Dup, who had like I think an 8 intelligence, like a -1. And so I was giving out kind of magic items to everybody that were sort of personalized. And so the one I gave him, just because I kind of random rolled for it and then was like, oh, I could see that being very entertaining, was a headband of intelligence, which is now the top hat of intelligence. So because we have one to make him physically wear.
We hit a point in game where we were having trouble figuring out whether he was wearing it or not in character.
Because he did something I truly wasn't expecting, which is he was like, I'm not always going to wear this because
it like makes me think too much.
It makes me think too much about death and mortality.
It was a really cool
morality.
role play moment.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have him on the show so we can talk about that choice, because it was very cool.
It's very cool and it's very fun. But when I gave it to him, one of the things I was thinking about was effectively I am giving him the alert feed, like a nerfed version of it. I'm effectively changing his initiative from -1 to a +4 because it makes him a 19 when he wears it into battle, which is also great. To imagine a barbarian going into a rage wearing a top hat.
Yeah, and no shirt. We figure he pretty much looks like a Chippendales dancer.
Anyway.
But that's been a change, and it has impacted our initiative. today, much bigger than we thought, because it doesn't sound like much to switch to another stat, but especially with a lot of Dex characters in the room, or characters who would rely on Dex to get their initiative, suddenly going from a +2 to like a -1 is a 3-point swing.
Yeah.
So, you're dropping down roughly 15% on a roll if you're talking about rolling on a d20. So it's a significant difference in whether we're able to go before the things we're hitting, or what order. Normally we could expect certain members of the group to tend to go before other members, and now we can't really rely on that anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I probably should be tracking it with enemies more too, because generally with initiative with bad guys, I just roll straight and I don't bother adding anything or subtracting because it's just faster.
Mm-hmm.
But I just realized I got to keep that in mind for my real dum-dums.
Yeah.
But usually they're getting the drop on you guys anyway.
And stuff.
Huh?
Like Etten. My go-to dum-dum bad guy is an Etten.
Yeah.
Because one dum-dum is fun. I mean, we're sidebarring now. We're TLDMing. But we're sidebarring now. But I love Ettens as a bad guy, or anything with 2 heads that is dumb, because having a single creature on a single initiative able to stupidly like argue with itself or like self-correct is just very
look over
fun.
there. No, you look over there.
No, I thought you were looking that way.
No, I was looking over there.
No, you said you're looking left.
And then they
both they
bam,
like
bam.
like clobber something at the same time from 2 different directions.
Yeah.
Instead of like intelligently breaking up their attacks or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is fun.
It is fun. But you proposed, not necessarily to put into play, but just to discuss.
I wanted to talk about, because something...
the Mearls Initiative.
Mearls Initiative. I wanted to talk about Mearls Initiative because it's been gaining a lot of traction. I've seen a lot of discussion about it.
And we should probably say, given our recording to release time, it's been getting a lot of traction about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
You know what? Maybe we'll release this one ahead of the ones we have recorded.
That's not a
already.
terrible idea. Or we might just release our... this is irrelevant for anyone listening. We might just release our remaining live play as a bonus content.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be able to listen to the Southern Lawyer trial
concurrently with this.
And at the same time as bonus content. But I think we'll scoot this episode up because it seems to be something that's on a lot of people's minds right now. And with the Mearls Initiative, I think there's a lot of really interesting elements to it, but there are definitely pros and cons. So let's talk about Mearls Initiative. The idea behind it, Mike Mearls, lead designer?
Yeah.
Is that his title?
Yeah.
Or head lead?
Some kind of designer.
He led the design of 5th edition. And his idea for Initiative is that you roll for each round based on what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super fascinating.
Yeah.
So if your character wants to do something super complicated, like change their, they want to stow a weapon and draw a new weapon and then swing with that weapon and then move, they're going to roll a lot of dice or a lot of high numbered dice, which will probably, and then it's an inverse on normal initiative. So the lower you are, you literally go in the order of the dice, in ascending order. So
instead of 20 to 1, 1 to 20.
Exactly. So the idea being, if you want to do something simple, you roll a small dice, probably a d4, and you do that thing, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Because your character's like doing something really quick.
If I want to jab you with a dagger, I roll a d4.
Take any time, right?
And I just do it.
So he just does it. But if you're adding a bonus action on that, so you're compounding and lengthening the amount of time it takes you. The idea being, it takes you more of the turn's time to do all of the stuff that you want to do if you want to do a lot of stuff or a lot of complicated stuff, which is super awesome. There's an already popular, I think Colville proposed this idea, which is
your
cool
mortal
too.
enemy.
I really like him. I hope he will like me too when I'll meet him. I guess I'll hopefully meet him.
I'll
just tell him. I'm gonna fucking get cool.
See, this happens every time
because I'm just yes-anding you.
Yeah.
But the Colville sort of variation on this variation of initiative centers around your damage dice.
Yeah.
So if you want to swing a mace, which is a D8, you'd roll a D8 for your initiative that round. If you want to do something with like a dagger, you'd roll a d4. And I think that's super interesting too, because you're basically putting the idea of when you go, you're giving dice is still dice. Dice will always be dice, but you're giving a sense of or ability to control where the players go in relation to each other, which can be hugely important for tactical battles.
Yes.
So if you approach combat in 5e in a tactical way, this is an excellent...
As an individual player.
Right. Or probably as a group more than anything else.
Well, that's...
Because the main con of this is that you have to roll initiative every round. Every round you roll initiative. So if we're talking about a part of the game that can already sometimes feel like the slowest part of D&D,
right?
We're talking about adding to every round. We're adding the slowest part of combat, which is usually figuring out what order everyone's going in.
Right. And what people have said, which makes sense to me, to counter that is they're saying what you're actually doing though is taking. If you think about being in combat as I think about what I'm going to, or it's my turn. I think about what I'm going to do. I say what I'm going to do. Then I wait until the end of the turn. But so I start waiting. Then Alan thinks about what he wants to do, then says what he wants to do. That under this initiative variant, everybody thinks about what they want to do at the same time and then says what they're going to do. Or commits to what they're going to do, and then they just have to say what they're going to do. So the amount of time you're not waiting while someone else is thinking about what they want to do because you're
rolling, yeah,
and you're thinking at the same time, which makes total sense to me.
But it does raise another issue, which is what happens when you roll initiative based on one thing, and then based on events that happen ahead of you in initiative order, you must or would like to change that thing,
right?
You know, so if you are going to move to a creature and stab it with your longsword as a fighter or whatever, and then you roll your initiative and all this stuff happens, and by the time it gets to your turn, that monster is already dead. Then,
and in a normal game, you'd be like, well, then I stow my longsword and I shoot my crossbow at the goblin across the clearing.
But in this case, you're locked. You're more or less locked in because I think as a DM. The knee jerk is like, well, then that person's action is no longer valid, so you just let them do whatever. But I think that's a trap for a DM.
Yeah.
Because then what you're doing is you're allowing people to potentially, and if you have to assume your players wouldn't abuse the mechanics because
purposely do this.
That just why
don't
play
with
those people?
Yeah, don't play with poo-poos.
Yeah. But the door is open to basically abuse that system and be like, I'm going to throw my dagger, and that's a D4 on initiative. And, oh, that thing is dead? Oh, how weird. And because you already knew it was dying. So you go, oh, no, that thing is dead? Well, I guess I'll cast Fireball. And now I'm doing something that would normally take like multiple dice of initiative on a very early initiative order.
Yeah.
So I think as a DM, you basically have to put your foot down and be like, if you say you're going to do something, you can change targets, but you cannot suddenly take up a bigger initiative dice.
Yeah. And the other problem with that is that if you do that, if you go to, I go to swing, and by the time it happens, that person's dead, and then you're like, well, I'm going to cast Fireball, I've thought about it, I'm going to cast Fireball, functionally at that point is what makes that better than regular initiative.
Right.
If they still are spending their turn thinking about what they're going to do next because circumstances have changed. So like either lock everybody into what it is. Because I've seen other people be like, oh, you just make them roll the extra stuff and then bump them down the initiative to that. But that still is taking time out of the actual play portion to do thinking about moves and slows everything down. So then just go back to like either everybody gets one roll and then they have to take those actions and then see where things are 6 seconds later, or they don't.
Yes.
But you can't, trying to mix the two doesn't make sense.
Right. However, I will say, so sort of piggyback off that, I think so for our style of DMing, we rarely, if ever, break out, actually you haven't ever, I rarely break out the battle maps and like set up tactical combat situations. So this, and that's usually only if the environment is so specific that I need it conveyed visually on the board what's going on and like what's available. So because we usually stick to a theater of the mind style of play, this initiative order only slows us down in terms of implementation.
Yeah.
But I will say, a version of Mearls Initiative, or maybe the Colville variation where you're rolling for weapon damage dice, is super, super valuable for any group that is, as a group, is interested and enjoys the tactical aspect of usually miniatures on a battlefield, because in that case you're conducting the group as a unit, right? So you're deciding what everyone's actions are going to be in at the same time. And then you're sort of like your positioning becomes super important in a way that it doesn't in theater of the mind.
I guess just to clarify then though, so you're envisioning that as a thing where it's like, well, I guess I'm going to do this. Oh, no, you should like where everybody's able to talk with each other and talk through their tactics. Right. Is that what you're imagining?
I think normally what's discouraged at the table in regular initiative is being like, hey, you should do this on your turn because I'm going 5 things later than you, and I'm going to do this thing.
Okay.
Which is, again, you're sort of cheating the initiative system, because the idea of it is like you're quote unquote acting simultaneously. So giving someone ahead of time information doesn't really work. But in this case, because people are rolling their initiative based on how much time it will take them to do things, there's a collaborative aspect to combat.
Cool. And that was the thing that didn't come across clear to me reading everything, was if that's the case, if it's like also built on the predication that it's like, and you will as a group, you're allowed to decide you're allowed to communicate.
You act as a round, right?
Yeah, right. So if it is a thing of like, cool, you stab him, I'm going to run and grab this thing, and then I'm going to set it up so that you can cast, I'm going to defend so you can cast your spell. If it's like that sounds very fun to me. The way that I was reading it, since it didn't specifically talk about that sort of like interpersonal communication, made it seem like just not that fun to me, because it was like it then without that understanding in place, then it's like I'm thinking about what I want to do, and tactically what I can do based on my roles and where I'm going to land, but I'm not necessarily thinking about other people or working with them. And so then that clarifies things and makes more sense to me, because then I can see why that would also be fun as a DM.
And it also, be like,
because then it's like, cool, you guys make this plan. Now roll your initiative,
and we'll see.
And now you're
what
out
order.
of order.
Exactly. That's the part that's super interesting to me in terms of running it. Is like, yeah, on paper, if I'm rolling a D12 to cast lightning bolt, I'm probably going to be towards the tail end if everyone else is shooting ranged weapons or just moving to another spot. But if I roll a fucking 4 or whatever, all of a sudden the paladin who's trying to run up and grab the gauntlet off the thing is now in my way. Right. And I've already committed to casting. So now I'm hitting my buddy,
right,
because the plan that we made has gone awry due to timing that's beyond our control, which feels like, to me, that feels like the chaos of battle in a way that regular initiative order lacks.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. That sounds very fun.
And again, if you play, so I'll keep saying this caveat over and over again. If you play tactically, I think that is a super fun and different way to approach combat. I don't like, for theater of the mind, I imagine that wouldn't work as well, because everyone's perceptions of distance relationships to things vary wildly from player to player, in a theater of the mind style combat environment. So even if you describe where everyone is in relation to each other, that environment is different enough that if you as a DM are like, okay, well, because you went first in initiative by mistake, you end up in front of this line of fire, it feels like a punish rather than because if you see it happen on the board, there's an objectivity to it,
right,
that you cannot get from just describing a location verbally.
Yeah.
So that's another reason I think for our style of play, Mearls Initiative might not work.
Now I'm way more curious. Before I said in my email response to you that I was like, I don't see the value in this, just because it felt like so crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
But that was because, again, I wasn't thinking about people actually communicating with each other in that what am I going to do moment.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking it would be basically like normal initiative, where it's like, you're like, I'm going to do this, and just sort of impulsively saying it regardless of other people. But if you're actually doing tactics each round of like, what do we know? who like paying attention to everybody else and what they're doing and like doing team ups and stuff, then that does sound very fun, because then it is more of like everybody versus the dice.
Right.
Because it's like the best laid plans.
You make assumptions based on what makes sense statistically, but you can't.
Yeah. And
so,
then
the other thing I think it does, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the other thing it does, I'll keep it brief, that I really like is something that's easy to forget in regular initiative is a round is simultaneous.
Right.
And that it does not come across that way in regular initiative at all. A round is supposed to be 6 seconds. That's just like a rule. Everybody knows that rule.
Mm-hmm.
But man, does it not feel like it.
No, it
when
feels
you
like
roll
minutes.
initiative order, it's just turns. It's turns, and then at the top of the new round-based abilities and like spells and saves and stuff reset. That's basically the function of a round in the normal dex-based initiative order. In this version, in the Mearls version, or the Colville version, or whatever variant you want to play of it, in a simultaneous roll world of it, where initiative changes every round, that really makes it feel to me like everything is happening all at once, and some things just take more time or have delayed effects.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that I think is very interesting in terms of preserving a sense of in-game time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah.
It's another pro of the system.
In the Mearls version, did they say how you resolve ties?
I think
I can't remember how you do it normally.
Normally it's Dex mod.
Just whoever
And
has higher.
I imagine that would still hold true. That makes sense to me mechanically.
Yeah. And then if that's still tied, just DM makes a call.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I would assume there will be a lot more ties if you're only rolling a D4. You know, if like 3 people are rolled D4, thoughts are
but then like
better.
a move adds dice,
Right.
and like bonus actions add dice.
Yeah, totally.
So you're actually creating more variance, which seems like it would make it less. I don't know. I'm not a statistician, but
Same. But I assume if you're rolling a D4 and a D6, that still is
someone
a
else
total
is
of,
rolling like a D6 and a D6.
Yeah, the lowest you could get is a 2, and the highest you could get is a 10.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little bit smaller than rolling whatever.
That's true.
Anyway, though, the other initiative order that we kind of briefly talked about was over email is Popcorn Initiative, which is sort of it's much sloppier tactical play, which I think is actually useful for groups like ours who are also less RPG minded players.
Mm-hmm.
That's not as true as it used to be, but certainly starting out, I typically every game I'm playing is with like 2 people who've played before and 3 who've never played D&D. And so they're
what does it say about you that you can't retain veterans? You know
See, the way I like to think about it is like I'm really open and always bringing new people into this pastime.
Yeah.
Everybody should play D&D to save their life.
I wasn't. I was just saying, how did that make you feel? You know what I mean?
Good. I feel like an
Then great. I'm
ambassador
happy
for
for
it.
you.
I mean, like, I guess you just started your first game, so everybody's new. So Popcorn Initiative, the way that it works is everybody rolls initiative, highest goes first, and then highest picks who goes next. I roll a 20, I go first, and then I'm like, and then Rake's going to go second, and then Alan gets to go, and then Alan gets to pick who goes next, and this is including the enemies. So I picked Alan, and say there's also like Cassandra is our other person, and then there's like 3 goblins. Alan can pick any of the goblins to go next, or he can pick Cassandra. But everybody has to go in the round. So if you pick Cassandra, then we all as players, we all go first, which is great. But then the goblins all go in order.
Right.
Or I could have been like, and then I picked that goblin who's in the weakest position to go next. And it's like, so you can do some tactical things in terms of like, it's basically a modified version of like players go and then DM goes. And it leans more in players' favor because they're always able to control the battlefield a little bit better.
Right.
But
and then
that
I
also
think
creates
there's
its own fun.
Metagaming issues that could potentially arise there too.
There is, but there is also a thing then where you can do a lot more of I grab my shield, I put it down, and I Wonder Woman you up in the air. You come and run and jump on it, and I pop you in the air because you're going next. And then you can be like, yeah, great, I'm in the air with this jump. I make this jump, and then I land. So you can like set up cool moves a little bit like it. I feel like it can create problems, but I think it also creates for much more cinematic battles. But that just end faster because it's like, and then you annihilate the bad guys, or you leave the bad guys to all like organize and annihilate you. So it does have definite plus and minuses. The hardest part when I've done it before is actually tracking when a round is over, is making sure everybody has gone in that round. It's also a little difficult for spells that end on your next turn, because the other thing is if you go and you're the last person to go, you can make yourself be the first person to go the next round because you're nominating the next.
Right.
And you can create weird little variances, but there are pretty easy solutions to it. You just say that a spell lasts one full round, regardless of when it's cast in the round previous and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty fun.
And
I recommend it for if you have a group that wants to have is real hack and slash, wants to do cool shit, but doesn't really care about figuring out the best way to do it. They just want to do random shit and see what works. Then Popcorn Initiative is pretty fun for it.
Yeah. And there's a load of initiative variants that already exist, right? And that the key again being, if you're going to elect for a variant rule or homebrew rule, if you're going to do one of those, it should be for a purpose that suits the playstyle of the room, right? So trying something because it sounds fun for your group is always the correct. That'll never be wrong. And then, but be aware from the DM side of it, be aware that if it ain't working, or it ends up being less fun or less intuitive for the room than what you were doing before, you might need to tweak some numbers or change back. And then that will just have to be okay.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other variants too. There's the initiative rule where you roll for initiative at the top of the day. So at the end of a long rest, when the players wake up, they roll for an in-game day. And then they just act on their initiative numbers without having to roll for every encounter, which I think is interesting. It seems like normal initiative to me. Yeah. You just never leave initiative order after the first one.
Yeah, you're
really
just always
what the variant is.
it.
Which is fine. I think if you're running a game sort of opposite ours, where you're running a lot of smaller encounters on a day-to-day basis, maybe that saves you a lot of time.
Right.
But then the downside of that being, if someone, if the wizard ends up at the bottom of the initiative order, then they feel like they're fucked for the entire day because they're going to get walloped on and not be able to position themselves properly or cast something like battlefield control-y, which is kind of what they probably built their character to do.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah. So there's those things to consider as well.
Yeah. And then there's also the very simple, we mentioned it already, but just all the players go and then all the monsters go.
Yeah.
Which is super simple. It has its own problems to it. But if you just want a simple thing, you just go clockwise around the table. And then after all the players have gone, the monsters go.
Yep. And then in terms of rest, another rest idea I sort of kicked around in this email chain to Tyler that I might experiment with in the Eastern campaign and see what that feels like.
Hell yeah.
Just so we can kind of simultaneously play test 2 rest variants and see what we like, or if there's any other options available to us too that maybe we haven't explored before, is the idea that a short rest regains a static amount of HP or a linear progression of HP. So my initial thought was maybe 3 or 4 times your level, total character level, on a short rest. So you just regain a flat amount of hit points, and your regular short rest resets. So warlock spells, key points, whatever other things I can't think of off the top of my head.
Points.
Sorcerer points on a short rest?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
Yeah. Whatever short rest resets, action surge, stuff like
surge.
that. And you get your hit dice back as normal on a short rest as well. Or actually that's abnormal. You regenerate hit dice on a short rest, and a flat amount of HP would be the change. And the long rest, is where you can spend hit dice.
Yeah.
So you can take a short rest to sort of catch your breath healing wise, and regain hit dice that you can then spend on a long rest to, actually recuperate, based on how, I guess my in-game, justification for this variant would be On a short rest, you're catching your breath and sort of like bandaging yourself up, but you can only do so much. And then on a long rest, depending on how well you sleep, which is a roll of the dice, you recover or wake up feeling better.
Yeah.
Whether
so
a little
that's
or
an option
a lot.
Too. Yeah.
And that was sort of my immediate reaction to my concern for Tyler's system, perhaps inadvertently pushing people to rest, over rest, I will say.
Yeah.
So this system encouraging rests more often, I would hope, but still limiting the resource or regenerative value of hit points on the whole. So maybe I'll try it and we'll see what it looks like.
Do it, dude. I'm excited to experience it.
Yeah, we'll see.
The only other homebrew thing that I'll be curious to see how it works out over the long term is that's not true. I know how it'll work out. It'll work out fine. As I had said, I gave everybody personalized magic items to try to fit kind of within character. And one was the headband of intellect, which I gave to Dup. That also gave him proficiency in investigation checks, just because I thought that would be interesting. If he can just put on a top hat and be Sherlock Holmes for as long as he's wearing it. Again, really assumed he was just going to always be wearing it. But I'm more excited about the alternative. And then Jeff's character, Laffy Taffy, the furball wild sorcerer, I gave what's a pretty common homebrew item, which is the Ring of the Grammarian, where you can change one letter in a spell title to produce a new effect once a day. And then other people, it's just been a long time since I've homebrewed, like made up magic items, and forgot how fun it is when you're not intensely worried about cause and effect. Or when you're not intensely worried about balance, because you just like give it cool effects that aren't directly related to anything and then see what happens. So, Gusty Skleet of the Desert Skleet's got some gloves that let her fly once a day for a round and lets her punch with flames, which is pretty in keeping for her character anyway. We got some use out of some stuff today. Sheriff Boots got some dope-ass kicks, some skateboarding shoes that let her spider climb and cast Shatter once a day by snapping her skateboard, which was fun to experience, like see her play with that and see her be like, so can I do this shatter thing? And it was like, hell yeah, you can.
And then she shattered on us, and we all got hit really hard.
Which was the best. I'm trying to remember what other people got. I guess I said everybody.
I got that ring.
Yeah, you got the petitioner. Petitioner.
Yep.
The ring.
A moment of your time?
Yeah.
Is my command word.
Yeah, I figured for a cult following missionary.
I wouldn't consider it a cult.
You're right.
It's the one true religion.
Yeah. For a missionary, I thought a thing that with that's where I homebrewed from was like, what would a missionary want?
Yep. So I can cast knock once per day to get my foot in the door, so to speak. And I can also basically trade my action to make an enemy creature not get an action. So
so you can, and I guess you're right. I didn't quite make that clear. Yeah, you can use. How did I? I didn't think through that enough. To think through what it is. I might make it that you can use your bonus action to steal their action.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that seems overpowered to me. On its face.
What I said originally was you can take their action and convert it into a bonus action.
Right. That still seems really strong.
Well, that does still seem really strong, but I think that's what it would be, and I think that would be on a bonus action. So you basically...
I use my bonus action to eat their action?
And get a bonus action.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to do that.
That's what it was intended to be.
All right, well, we'll try it. But for monsters that are generally already balanced around getting 3 or more attacks to make action economy balance, taking away 3 attacks from a monster seems insane.
Don't care.
All right, well, I'm going to do it.
The other thing that, in terms of homebrew that I tried today, which I'll be curious to hear if it affected anything on your end, because I didn't tell anybody that I was going to do it beforehand, was I didn't keep mathematical score of hit points for any of the
your monsters?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I've done that before. I just eyeball it?
No, I just decided if the Zapacna, if the bad guy, like if the humanoid bad guys got hit twice, they were dead. And if the 4-legged bad guys got hit 4 times, they were dead. And then one of the hits,
basically, as many legs you have, that's how many hits you can take.
more or less. The cactus though had to be hit 12 times.
Oh wow.
But you guys didn't fight it at all. And then it was like, oh, you rolled like you got like a 2 damage. I'll just like keep it at 2. So like, or like there was one point where it was like a fight and it was like, yeah, he's dead. That feels like the most
death to
that
me.
feels like the fun hit to me. And then other times it was like, that doesn't feel like the fun hit.
I think that's
we'll
fine.
keep playing till we get that cool hit.
From a fudge standpoint, like, of course you can do that anytime. Mechanically, I'm glad we didn't know that because we of course didn't notice. So it's just fun to play because we didn't know. I think knowing that were true would devalue spells a lot.
I thought about that as well, but I did the math on things to figure out what the average damage of stuff is. So like a powerful spell, I eyeball that to be 2 hits instead of 1.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, then that works.
Yeah. So 1 hit is like if you get hit once by a weapon, it's
sort of like the wound system in like Boss Monster. Have you ever played that game?
Mm-mm.
Okay. There are other games that have done something similar too, where like as opposed to a hit point value or like numerical value, you can have you can sustain a certain number of like hits or wounds.
Yeah.
And heavy damage might be like 2 wounds at once.
Yeah, that's
something like that.
pretty much what I'm doing. So basically, I'm again slightly overpowering y'all because it's a little bit easier to kill things. Because it's like instead of being like, well, it took like one of those hobgoblin half dragons. That's the sort of default stormtrooper now in this 1,000 years ahead in 1984. Their like hit points is like 23, and so it's like instead of having like to deal with using your longsword and like getting an 11 down on hit points, and then like 3 threes, and then he's still up but hanging on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whatever you have a longsword. You hit him twice. You stabbed him twice with your longsword. Like, yeah, good job. He's dead.
Fucking dead.
He's dead. He's got 23 hit points
to kill a thing. Stabbing something twice is usually enough to kill.
And then it's like, oh, you did shatter on him. Oh, yeah, of course he's dead.
Yeah, he's shattered.
You exploded him.
He's
yeah,
shattered.
Yeah. Which
show me something shattered that is still able to swing at me.
Am I right? I mean, come on, guys. But it's interesting.
Get Mearls on the phone. Where's Mearls?
We gotta talk. Well, but actually,
your arch nemesis, Mike Mearls.
Yeah, I hate Mike Mearls.
There we go.
Mearls.
This feels better to have you have a
guy. Mike Mearls. Oh, I want to design an elegant system that everybody can use and modify at will. Okay, go away. Way to go, Mike. God, like, ooh, good job. What, you want a pat on the back for doing a good job on a thing that
you were hired to do?
You were hired to do? Ugh.
You know what? I do my job all the time, and do I expect applause?
I mean, yeah, you do. You literally do.
Well, that's different because
you're a performer.
So if there was none, then that would suck.
Yeah. But like Mike Mearls, hide out on Twitter, and you know what?
Yeah, hide out on Twitter, handing out advice to every person who asks you a question.
Oh yeah, cool, Mike. Way to go. Way to give us a bunch of Unearthed Arcana and then take it away from us by not putting out as much anymore.
Yeah, giving us a bunch of content and then not
giving as much
more
content
that we demand.
Dick.
I bet he's real cool in real life.
I'm sure he is. But one thing that I have been thinking about, listening to like Adventure Zone, which we've talked about, is a great podcast for stuff. And then one that they talk about, Friends at the Table, listening to people using Dungeon World. I'm really curious to play it at some point, and
maybe we should.
I might have us play a session or two
using that system
because that system is super simple and it does the DM doesn't roll for anything ever. It's all just based on like how well you roll. The DM is just like either like, yep, you killed it, or you're like, well, it hits you too, or is like, yeah, you missed and like things got worse. So it's like either like, yep, it's dead, or well, you both get some hits in, or your sword falls out of your grip. What do you do now? It's sliding away.
Can I pick up your sword?
Yeah, roll to pick up your sword.
2.
Oh, wow, you knocked it further away,
Oh, I'm
and you
so
got
klutzy.
hit in the head, and you got
The head is my only weak point.
no. You've got two of them, and one of them's smart, and one of them's dumb.
Dang.
You're an Etten.
I'm an Etten, and that is a callback joke for you guys.
Yeah, because we are performers. Yeah.
All that said,
So the question I was going to ask,
yeah, go
was
ahead.
to everybody out. Speaking of homebrew content, if you've homebrewed anything that you're like pretty stoked on, and you want to share out, like hit us up on Twitter, TLDM Podcast.
Yep, at TLDM Podcast. Or comment on this if you're downloading from Libsyn directly or from iTunes or wherever. Comment on there and we'll see it.
Yeah,
If you want us to analyze the thing, great. If you just want us to shout it out, we'll just do that.
Yeah, if you just want to tell us the cool name for your item you made up,
Yeah,
great.
Neat. Here's a cool name for an item for you guys. It's called the Kessler Snap Chain.
Ooh.
What does it do? I don't know. Tell me.
Yeah, and who's Kessler?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, with all that said, feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts. Again, the topic of the day was basically homebrewing content. Homebrewing content and speaking correctly were the topics of the day. Leave us some thoughts if you like, with rules you've tried that have worked or failed abysmally. If you have firsthand experience with the Mearls system or any initiative adjustments of your own or rest adjustments that you found particularly interesting or fun, feel free to shout them out to us and we'll talk about them on a future episode.
Heck yeah.
And as always, thanks for listening. And the Dungeons & Dragons advice phrase of the day from Tyler is...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, don't count the gold, D4 the fight.
Got him.